Great.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Trout Wrangler Podcast. Today is Friday, January 24th. It is currently 12:38 in the afternoon. Not much has really happened since the last time we recorded. But we do have a guest today. This is Winston Clark. He is introduce yourself quick and just tell him what you do. I can't
Yeah,
really.
sure. Um, hey, I'm Winston Clark. I'm from Concord, North Carolina. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee now. I used to study freshwater ecosystems, and now I'm working as a fly fishing guide. So, did my undergrad at NC State, studied fisheries biology there. That's where I got my bachelor's. And I came to UT to get my master's in fisheries biology as well. So,
That's pretty good, dude. I didn't even know you were guiding up there.
yeah,
Dude,
yep.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's
Dude,
a
so
blast, man.
are you
It's a lot of fun.
are you just doing like freelance stuff, or are you doing for like an outfitter?
I'm working for. I won't name the company, but because I'm not supposed to be like saying I'm affiliated or whatever
Okay.
for all that technical stuff. But I work for a mountain resort
Oh,
right
cool.
outside of the Smokies, and they've got a private stream on the property there. That's where we take most of our guests. Most of them are first timers, so we've got a little practice pond where we teach them how to cast and teach them how to fight a fish, and then we go out and take them fishing. We do take folks into the Smokies as well, but most of our guests are fishing the private stream.
That's pretty cool, dude. That
Yeah,
private stuff's insane, dude. I've never really even
yeah.
looked into that. Do you guys just like, or do you just have like a truck come in and drop them in there?
It froze there for a second. Was the question, do we
Oh
stock
shoot.
or?
Yeah, do you guys just like privately stock it yourselves, or you guys have like the big wildlife truck come in and just dump a bunch in there?
We get
Uh,
fish from a hatchery,
okay,
so
cool.
yeah.
That's pretty
And
cool.
there's some hogs in there, man. There's some big rainbow trout,
Dude, that's awesome.
and it's
You
so funny,
gotta,
dude. There's a lot of people. It's their first time like ever fly fishing or just fishing, period. And they'll hook like a 22-inch rainbow, and I'm freaking out, and they're just like, "Oh, is this a good fish?"
it's like, yeah,
Yes. Yeah,
yeah, it's a good
it's
fish.
huge.
Yeah, it's probably the biggest rainbow I've ever seen somebody catch in
Yeah. Oh,
person.
dude. And they're gluttonous fish, man. They get
Dude,
big and fat.
I
So
love I love when something like that happens though, and and it's like, is this a nice fish? It's like, yeah, it's a 24-inch brown trout for Christ's sakes.
oh
Oh,
dude, I'll tell you what, man. The funniest thing is without fail, every time I take a husband and wife, because we're normally taking two people. Frequently it's a husband and wife, sometimes it's like a father and son. Without fail, the woman the lady always catches the biggest fish of the day,
always.
and usually more. I think part of it is they just listen better. They understand the directions better, and they're not like, oh, I'm going to do it my way. They just,
Yeah,
yeah,
dude, I
they're
love when
just
that
naturally
happens
better
though.
at it.
Dude, and it's like usually I used to work for a mountain resort too, or it's like a resort community, mountaintop out there in Cashiers. And I did like a little bit of stuff like, with them, doing a little bit of guiding and stuff. And it was always so funny when you have the husband pull up and he's just like the biggest douchebag of all time. And then the wife's all interested and she ends up catching like a 25, like a big brook trout or like a big rainbow brown. She's like, "Oh, is this a nice fish?" It's like, "Yeah." And you look over at the husband and he's just like, "What the hell, dude?" Like, yeah, maybe if you weren't such a friggin' dickhead, you probably have that fish in your hands right now and you actually listen.
Well,
But
that's the thing is like a lot of times it'll be a husband and wife, and the husband will be like, "Oh, I just came off of this trip to Wyoming, and we were just catching them hand over fist. We caught 40 fish in a day, and every single one of them was over 18 inches or whatever it is that they say."
yeah,
And he's like, "But I know how to do this. You just teach my wife." And without fail, in those scenarios, the wife is always
yeah.
always catching more fish.
Dude, I love it too when I kind of had it happen to me in Aruba a couple weeks ago when when you got a guy that pulls up and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've been doing this for a while," and then the wind starts blowing and it's like he forgets how to cast. It's like, dude, I went to Aruba 2 weeks ago and I did it all DIY and I completely shit the bed. Like
Oh, did you?
yeah, dude, I had looked up places to go and everything. I had looked up places to go. I had like, oh man, dude, it was so bad. It was so bad.
Oh, did you catch anything?
Dude, I hooked a few tarpon, like baby
Okay,
tarpon,
all right.
and I was like,
Okay.
"All right, I went full fledged. I was going down there. I'm like on the flight, sitting in Charlotte Douglas, looking at my phone, watching bone fishing videos. I'm like, dude, this is gonna be fucking awesome. I pull up, dude. It's blowing 30 down the pipe, and I'm
Oh
sitting there
no.
with an 8 weight. Blew 30 down the pipe the entire trip. I'm sitting there with an 8 weight in my hands, and I'm double hauled. Dude, you would have thought I was trying to throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball down the gut. How bad I was sitting there. I'm like, finally, I just went out like in the evening, and like we were going to dinner most of the nights, and it's like I packed 6 beers. And damn, those fucking pictures. My girlfriend won't move them either, dude. But I packed like 6 beers in my backpack. And I go out there, like I had like a fly box in the backpack. It was like a drawstring backpack I got at a 5K. And I was like, oh, this is going to be perfect for uh, for like flies and stuff like that when I go to Aruba, where it's like I just don't give a damn about the backpack. It's like I'll throw it on, it'll get salt water all over it. I looked like Benny the Bull from Dora the Explorer with this little backpack on.
No.
Dude,
No.
I'm out there. I'm like, all right, dude. It's like if it's gonna blow like this the entire trip, it's like I'm just gonna start packing beers in my backpack and just slugging them
Yeah.
walking around.
Yeah.
Dude,
At least have fun casting.
exactly,
Yeah.
dude. It's like I know, like the couple tarpon I hooked was like crunch time before we were going to dinner, and I was so drunk that it's like they jump up, and it's like I'm not feeding them like that, trying to like keep it tight. They're getting slack, and they're just coming off, and there's like Spanish locals, like Aruban Spanish locals, sitting there freaking out on the beach. They're like, oh,
Oh,
and
that's
it's
even worse.
oh fuck. I'm like, I didn't even land that thing, dude. One of them was decent. Like, I'm talking like that. It wasn't like it was like borderline micro tarpon to like a right on that juvenile if you're down in Florida, of course. A
Mm.
local could catch like a big tarpon and eat it in Aruba. That's what's happening to the bonefish there. But
Wow.
I jumped one and I was in there on the beach like, oh, and I'm not understanding what they're saying, but they're probably calling me names and they're like, dude, this guy sucks.
Yeah.
But dude, yeah, shit the bed. Literally hooked 3 fish the entire trip,
Wow.
blowing down the pipe. I was like, fuck, man. I was like, all that research and everything, dude. I tied up like 60 flies, like clouser minnows, and
Oh
oh, dude,
man.
like Koga's bonefish flies, like shit that took me a while to tie. I ended up only throwing a clouser minnow the entire
The
time.
entire
The
time.
entire time.
So now you got 59 flies left
Yeah,
for the next
I got
trip.
like 60. I literally got 59 flies for the next trip. It's like, I don't know the next time I'll be able to even fish for tarpon or bonefish, but I got a full damn fly box full of damn tarpon and
Dude,
bonefish flies. But yeah, dude,
man.
I should have got a guide. There was a guide on
I
the
was gonna
island.
say, what if you could do something different next
Yeah.
time? What would you change?
Oh, dude,
You might get a
I'd just
guy.
go down there. I'd call the one guide on the island and be like, "Yeah, give me 3 days."
Yeah,
And I was
yeah.
like, "I'll give you like free advertising as well, but I just want to go down there and actually catch fish,
Oh
specifically
man.
bonefish." But dude, yeah, I hate when that kind of shit happens. But it's like the same thing happened to me up there in the Smokies in college. Went up there for a week and I didn't bring waders or anything, not even a rod, and I ended up having to stop at Little River Outfitter to buy a Orvis encounter.
Oh,
But
dude, shout out Little River Outfitters.
dude, they're the
Best
shit.
shop. They're the
That
best
shop,
shop.
dude, yeah, it's all old guys in there that just live
Yeah.
to talk fishing. It's a great shop, but
Yeah, fantastic.
dude, great stuff. So originally I just went on a tangent there for a second, but what originally got you interested in studying freshwater ecosystems?
So, I mean, for me, it really goes back to just growing up as a kid. I spent so much time outside. Um, that I've sound like a boomer, but back in my day, when I got grounded, I couldn't go. I got grounded from going outside. Like I
Yeah.
had to stay inside, whereas now the kids these days, now they get grounded and it's like go outside to play. It was the opposite for me. I couldn't
Yeah.
get enough, and I just loved insects. Like I loved bugs. I dressed up as an entomologist for Halloween one year as a kid. If that tells you
That's awesome.
anything about what I was interested in. And then I learned how to fish pretty early on too, and then later, even than that, and around high school, I started learning about. I learned how to hunt, um, and just I've never been narrowly interested in one thing. It's always I've always been interested in how does everything work together, because everything is so interconnected. There are relationships between the plants and the insects and the mammals and the fish and everything. Everything's interwoven, and I was just fascinated by that. So I went to college. At the time, I wanted to be a deer biologist. That's what I had kind of decided on when I got to college. So went to NC State, studied fisheries, wildlife, and conservation biology was the degree. So
Okay.
it was perfect for me because I got everything that I wanted to. And about halfway through the degree, you do an intensive summer field course program where you go out for 6 weeks and you spend a week at the coast and you learn about marine biology. And then you do 4 weeks in the Piedmont where you're learning plant identification, bird identification, reptile, snake, lizard, fish identification, and then you spend a week in the mountains up at Tremont actually, and you learn about some of the mountain ecology.
Yeah, that's where
Uh,
I stayed when I did the weekly
yeah,
course. Some good
yeah,
fly fishing
Tremont's
around there.
incredible. Yeah,
Dude,
that's
it's
that's one of the
unbelievable.
first places I um, really experienced like a lot of success fly fishing was up near Tremont. So
Right.
special place in my heart. But
Oh yeah.
through that course, I learned a lot about plants and trees, and I started being able to predict what types of animals would be in different types of forests at different successional stages. And um, you can it's like it felt as it had as much gravity to me as learning how to read, because now I can look at a forest and know that forest was harvested 30 or 40 years ago, and this is the plant community that's coming up with it. These are the trees that I already know are there just by like how it looks, but then I can go in and identify them, and based on that I can predict what types of animals are there. I can predict what kind of interactions are going on. So um, it was really just like that was just a fast track to that kind of thing. So
Right. Dude,
um,
that's awesome though, because
yeah,
all of that like relates to everything. Like you, like you said, you like to hunt. It's like you that gives you such an advantage in situations like that, where it's like the average angler, the average hunter, can't walk into the woods and be like, all right, yeah, that's the cedar tree. There's gonna be this here. They're gonna be rubbing on this tree. That's unbelievable. And honestly, I wish that I did that in college more. Like I know Clemson has a pretty good program and NC State has a good program. I just did recreation in parks hoping that I could do something like that. And
yeah,
I just didn't go the right route in that situation. But you keep going. That's something that like it always sticks out to me because it's like those guys, they call them fishy guys, they call like the hunter guys, it's like they're deery guys, I guess, ducky guys. And it's like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that dude just kills a bunch of ducks or he catches a bunch of fish. And it's like, no, that dude studies it and learns it inside out. And it's like that. Like I have a question. You saw the what's it called? The thing I sent you, the outline. There's a
hmm
question coming up that's gonna be awesome. But
yeah,
keep on
yeah, for
keep on
sure.
going. Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, during that field course program, we got some hands-on experience with pond management too, and that teaches you some really basic principles about um, how, especially like larger ecosystems, tend to work with a really limited kind of like basis as far as species go. So it's really basically just like a bass and bluegill situation. You might have shell crackers in there, but learning that there's only so much biomass that can be supported in a certain system. You can, the average farm pond can support about 100 pounds of bass per acre. So you can divide that into 10-pound bass or 100 1-pound bass, and any combination that you can add up to 100 based on those different size classes. But you can't really ever exceed that biomass number. So that taught me more about learning how these different things work, and learning about fish identification too. Non-game fish identification was super cool, because the more you learn about that kind of thing, the more you see that each fish species and each type of fish species has its own little niche carved out in the ecosystem, its own little place where it likes to hang out in the stream, and its body is adapted to that particular area in the stream. Like, if you've ever seen a darter before, they're just little diminutive. They're not minnows, because minnows a different classification of fish, but somebody might see them and call them a minnow just because they're small. Right. They've got these like big pectoral fins that they use to anchor themselves down in the current, so they'll hang out in the fast riffles and just use that current to push against them and hang out and feed. They have all different kinds of specializations, and learning about that was so fascinating. So through that, I was able to make a connection with a professor or a postdoc at NC State who was doing a diet study for green sunfish in an urban stream on campus.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So what we did was we went out and we did a big sampling of green sunfish. And there's this little stream on NC State's campus. It runs between Miller Fields, if anybody's familiar with NC State, Miller Fields and the Carmichael Recreation Center. It's literally just like, it's just a stream in the middle of this urban area. It's all concrete all around it. It's been restored, but the only thing that hangs out in there as far as fish species are green sunfish and the occasional goldfish that somebody dumps from one of the dorms. We found two, actually. We found two goldfish, and we know it was two separate ones because the first time we caught it, we put a pit tag in it, which is the same like chip that you would put in a pet that just has a number identifier. We put a pit tag in the first one and let it go, and then came back and found a different one.
Dude, so, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
dude, you gotta do like, it's like how you chip a dog. It's like scan it. It's like, hey Jimmy, we got your goldfish down here in the stream. Yeah. And it's like the Oceark where they tag the whales and they track them all up and down the East Coast. That'd be so funny if they just started something like that where it's like goldfish Oceark on NC State's campus.
Yeah, there are some really cool types of technology. So for these particular chips, they're about the size of a grain of rice, and you just put it with a little needle, you put it into the body cavity, and then you have to run a reader over top of it. And you can put one of those chips in a human, I found out, because there's a lady that came out with us who studied sea turtles, and she was like, I have one of those chips. I was like, no, you don't. You're full of crap. There's no way. She's like, oh yeah, it's right here on my arm. Here. So she took the scanner and beep, sure enough, she's got a pit tag in her arm.
It's unbelievable.
Her thing was she didn't want to do anything to the animal that she wouldn't do to herself. So I respect her standing on business, honestly.
That's kind of, I was going to say, straight up stood on business.
Seriously.
It's like, wow.
Yeah, so this study, we went out, caught a bunch of green sunfish in the spring, and we took stomach samples from them and tagged them and released them. We came back in the fall and took stomach samples again, and we compared, and then we euthanized the fish, and we were going to do like an age and growth thing. So fish will lay down annual rings if they're in an area that has enough seasonality for this, where their metabolism slows down a lot in the wintertime. They'll lay down seasonal rings in bony structures in their body, just like a tree does. And they do that in these bony structures. You can see it in the scales, actually, if you want to do a non-lethal way. Catfish do it in their spines. But all fish that have otoliths, all fish have otoliths, which are just ear bones or ear stones. And they'll lay down those rings on those otoliths, and you can euthanize the fish, take the otolith, and measure how long the fish is, how much the fish weighs, then measure the distance between all of those rings and get an idea of how much a fish grew in a particular year. which is just fascinating stuff. So
That's unbelievable.
we compared their diet in the spring and in the fall, and there was also another group that went out and sampled all the invertebrates in the stream. They did a benthic invertebrate survey to compare what the fish were eating versus what's available. So they were seeing if the fish were selective or if they were just generally eating everything. And we found that they did show like a seasonal difference in their diet, which, yeah, of course they did, right? You would kind of expect that, but to be able to prove it with science was really what got me
That's pretty cool, man.
into that.
That's awesome. Dude, I went last week. Friday, I got bored. I had like cabin fever sitting there. I was like, it's gonna be kind of nice. I went into Charlotte and I was like, I'm just gonna go essentially blue lining in the middle of the city, walking around Charlotte with a flyer on. Dude, there are homeless people walking the streams and stuff.
Whoa.
Dude, and I looked at some of these streams and I was like, dude, there's no way this is a healthy stream. I was like, how many homeless people come out here and like shower and bathe in these? And I'm sitting there, dude, I didn't catch a damn thing. Because, dude, like usually in the summer, you could go, you remember probably, you could go to, what's it called? Little Sugar Creek Greenway and catch literally like 100 sunfish, some rock bass and stuff like that. And I didn't even see a fish. I was like, nice. I was like, sweet. Probably should do this in the summer, not in the dead of winter. But it's crazy, dude. It's like I was like, the fact that I don't even see like darters or like little bait fish running around, I'm like, it's probably not good. And then it's like, the way Charlotte's going now, it's like I'm walking around on the bank and I'm like, I was like, good thing I don't have my waders because it's like, there's no telling what I'd be standing on top of. It's like, walking around, you kick a Glock up, something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh.
Yeah, you got to watch out for pokey stuff in urban areas. That's for sure.
But
no doubt.
where have you studied? Like what rivers, parks? You already said the Great Smokies, and what was your favorite one?
Oh man, my favorite one. That's a tough question, but I'll name a couple that come to mind. So my favorite would have to be, so I grew up fishing Lake Norman, and I haven't done any like formal scientific research out there. I know all the biologists that work out there, but that was my first kind of foray into, I really started picking up on the differences in the Alabama bass and the largemouth bass habits.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what really kind of started getting me interested in fisheries, was that Lake Norman's a fascinating system. It's a man-made reservoir. It's super deep. It's very clear, low nutrients. And it's Alabama bass, which are not native, are introduced to this system, and they're thriving because they do very well in these really low nutrient systems. They're more pelagic. They'll swim out in the middle of the dumbest places, basically. You've been out there. It's so stupid, the places that they'll end up. One thing I got in the habit of doing when I fished out there a lot was just casting randomly off the other side of the boat, and more often than not, it seemed like there are fish on that side.
Crazy,
it's
dude.
Like, what are they doing? They're just hanging out 15 feet off the end of a dock.
Right.
There's nothing out there. But that's where they are.
Everybody always talks about Norman, and it's like, we've both fished that. There it goes. All right, it's back. Dude, it's like, we fished Norman a lot, fishing in college, fishing and stuff like that. Dude, I think QCKBF. Norman is one of the most unpredictable fisheries. And when everybody hears, oh yeah, Lake Norman, they're like, oh yeah, get your jig rod ready. We're going to go skip docks all day. Yeah. It's like, no, dude. It's like 95% of the time, it's like I've been burned on docks. And it's like, you know what? I'm just going to go and sit there and get out into like 40 feet of water and just sit there with a drop shot, and you stick fish out there. You'll catch fish out there, whether it's on brush or like rock piles on the bottom. It's crazy.
or seemingly nothing at all.
Exactly, dude. Norman, that's what's so unpredictable about that
Yeah.
place. It's like
I love it though.
I
Yeah,
do too,
it's my favorite place to fish, man.
dude. Because you're either gonna catch 100 fish. Fuck. You're either gonna catch 100 fish, or you're gonna sit there and catch like 3 or 4 big ones. You know, which is crazy. I went and tried to be a game warden and got to the
Okay.
fourth round of interviews, and wrote that you have to write an essay at the end of it. I wrote mine about the F1 largemouth stocking.
Oh,
And
you think that's why you didn't make
that's
it?
probably where I went wrong. I was like, yeah, there's already a pretty healthy amount of blueback herring in that lake, but it's like, why would you stock F1 largemouth when you could go and buy a bunch of blueback herring and just dump a dump truck full of blueback herring into Lake Norman and make those spots just grow to be 10 times bigger?
Yeah, I have my own kind of
Lagged.
opinions on that, and I think it's
Yeah.
I'm in favor of whatever the biologists want to do out there, because
Right.
they're the guys that know it best, and there's a very loud, and I respect it. There's a loud contingent of anglers that really wanted to see F1s in there, so hey, might as well try it. But
Exactly.
coming from that biological perspective of there's only so much food to go around. There's only so much, pie, so to speak. And if you cut it into, if you're adding more fish to it, you're adding more mouths to feed. I don't know. But that maybe they're more aggressive. The thing is, some of those F1 bass can really shut down when it's cold.
Oh yeah.
So,
I lived in Florida for 2 years when I was working for the villages. I could have a podcast about some of the stories I've got from there alone, but those F1 largemouth in the winter, like those winter days, in Florida where they have the occasional like 45, 50 day out there, those fish will shut down. And you'll go out onto the chain and you won't get one bite. It sucked, but dude, yeah, that's why I think I didn't get that job. But
well, maybe it's for the better.
I think so. But dude,
Maybe so.
the craziest thing on about Norman now though, those spots are, dude, like your cookie cutter spot now is like 3 pounds.
Dude, I haven't been out there. This is so sad. I haven't been out there in probably 2 years. I've just been so busy with stuff up here and haven't had time to make it out there. But I've heard the average spot is
Yeah, it's
getting
like,
thick.
dude, yeah, you'll catch like a non keeper and it's gonna be like 2.5 pounds. I'm not even messing with you. It's crazy. Last time I fished out there, I sold my boat and I mainly only like fly fish now. Because I was living off of Brookshire Boulevard and got all but 3 of my rods stolen out of my truck.
Dude.
Dude, and like
Oh
all of my
man.
tackle, dude. I had like a bunch of JBs like custom
Yeah.
and all that stuff. I got them all stolen, and I was like, you know what?
Not the dude.
I was like,
That hurts. That hurts, especially
it
because
does.
JB's not around anymore.
Yeah,
So
dude. I had a custom one with like a purple grit. And I was like, damn, dude. I was like, there's some guy fishing Mountain Island under the bridge right now. I was like, damn, this thing's pretty nice. But it's
or
like,
backlashing it to eternity every single time.
exactly,
Probably
dude.
threw the bait casters away.
Exactly. But
Dude.
they all got stolen. I was kind of getting out of it already, though. Because it's like, I literally have more fly rods and stuff like that than I had any, like, bass gear now. It's like, I got like six fly rods. And it's like I just don't have the use to really go bass fishing anymore. I'd rather make the 3 hour drive to go fish like the West Fork of the Pigeon River than drive. And it's like, it's so much work putting the boat in the water, towing it all the way to the damn lake, and all that. And I was like, you know what? I was like, fly fishing's really just the way to go.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. I
It's a lot
respect
more
it, man.
fun.
I
But
respect it. I've gotten out of it more and more. Not intentionally. The funny thing is, I thought that I was gonna fish so much more having a degree. Like I have 2 degrees in this now. I have a master's degree.
Right.
And I just, when you go outside and work every day in the streams, it takes, I don't know, it feels almost like you kind of satisfy that part of you maybe that wanted to get
Right.
out and fish so much. It's like, man, I've been fishing basically all week. I was using electricity, not
Yeah.
but it's also it's grueling work. I've working in the biological field is you're working through all times, some of the hottest and coldest times of the year. And man, after a week of 90 degrees, the last thing you want to do is go suffer more outside.
Strap on the waders and sweat your ass off.
Yeah, which is why I feel like guiding is for me, it's kind of such a sweet balance because I got a job coming out of my master's at Oak Ridge National Lab. I was working as a biological field technician there. And what we did was a lot of routine, just monitoring of fish for contaminants. So we would sample all around the lab. If you're not familiar, that's where they did some of the Manhattan Project stuff. So a lot of pollution in that area. And part of our job was to sample the fish, check the levels of contaminants in them. And it just was, it wasn't, I got into it because I loved conservation and really I wanted to be a professor. I wanted to teach. So I didn't feel like I was learning anything in that job anymore because it's just the same thing year after year.
Right.
I certainly wasn't teaching anybody anything because I was the lowest man on the totem pole. And, but with guiding, man, I get to interact with people. I get to learn while I teach them and I get to share things that I learned through my master's and through my bachelor's and everything. So it really is a nice combination of those things.
That's pretty awesome, dude. And that is something that's like, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, dude, you just teach people to fish all day. It's like, nah, dude, you got to talk to the people. You got and it's cool having conversations with some of those people,
For sure.
And some of them, it's just like talking to my dog, and then, you got some that are really cool, but
I'm fortunate. Pretty much all the folks that I've had have been, really awesome. The only time it's not super fun is when and this is very, very rarely, it's just somebody doesn't seem to really be interested at all. That's super rare. That's maybe like 1% of the time. The rest of the time, even I've had people say, I'm not even outdoorsy. Like I don't even like being outside and I had a good time doing this. And that's a cool feeling.
Yeah, dude, that's kind of how like my younger brother is that way. And I brought him up to dang West Fork of the Pigeon River, and we caught the piss out of him that day. And I think we had to have caught 60 fish. And he's like, dude, this is awesome. He's like, this is awesome, dude. It's like, we got to do this again. I was like, yeah, man. I was like, anytime. And then me and my girlfriend's coworker, Kenny, I got him into it too. We went up to West Fork of the Pigeon River, I think last month, and caught 95.
Wow.
It was crazy, dude. We got there late too, because he woke up late and hungover, and he was like, "Damn, sorry, I'm late. I'm sitting down where we were gonna meet." And he's like, "I'll be there in 45." I was like, "Dude, I'm 5 seconds from leaving." We got there at 11 and left, I think, at like 3:30, and we caught 95 fish.
That's incredible.
And
on the fly too? Were you fly fishing?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was crazy,
dude.
But my next
awesome.
question, you take as long as you want to answer this, because I think this is probably going to be the best question that I've actually asked in this podcast.
Okay.
So
no pressure or anything. I'll see what I can do.
So, a lot of anglers get caught up thinking about hatches, flies, etc. What is one thing that anglers should be studying about say like a particular ecosystem or fishery? Oh no, did it lag? There it goes. All right, it's back. So like one thing about a particular ecosystem or fishery that anglers could familiarize themselves with to better themselves as an angler.
It's a fantastic question, and I have a couple of different answers for this. And I think that the number one, this answer kind of covers the rest of the things that I'll say. But, and this is not an original thought or idea by me, but it is probably the most true one that I can think of. And it's just be observant. Be observant. When you get to the stream, take a second and just look. Use your eyes, take 5 minutes, just see if there's any insect activity, see if there's any fish rising, maybe pick up a couple rocks and look underneath them and try to see what's going on. Take a picture of the bugs. And if you can't identify them, take that picture to Little River Outfitters if you're up here. You're like, hey, man, what's this thing? And they can tell you, and you can start to build this kind of catalog in your head of what times of year different things are going on. So that's the number one thing that's really going to help somebody, is just start paying attention more, and check in constantly. Don't just get to the stream and, okay, I observed for 5 minutes. Now I'm just going to fish super hard. Like, things can start hatching halfway through a trip, or maybe the sun is out and then the sun goes away and it's just clouds. And a lot of times I've found that fish change the preference of what they're eating whenever that happens. Like maybe you go from a gold bead to a silver bead. It's something as simple as that. But if you notice, okay, the sun's gone away and now it's cloudy and I haven't gotten a bite since then change something up. Just pay attention, man. There's nothing, and that's because it'll make you a better angler. You can start to put different phenomena together that you notice and tie that to your fishing experience. But to me, that's also kind of the whole point, right? Like, Go out there and enjoy it with every sense that you have. Smell the rhododendron flowers, listen to the sound of the water, listen to the birds calling, pay attention to what's going on in the stream. Get some polarized freaking sunglasses. Okay. That's huge. If you're going to fish and you actually want to improve something, if you don't have polarized glasses, you're missing out on an entire world underwater. You're missing so much, for a lot of reasons, because you can see fish activity under the water, and maybe you see a fish come up and inspect your fly and refuse it. And then, maybe you need to change something, or maybe your drift was bad. But it will also show you different structure in the stream, and it'll help you see where the depth changes are. And that kind of thing is going to be really important for helping you. So that's number one. Pick up some rocks, look at the bugs, start trying to learn what the insects are. Yeah, study the hatch charts. That's going to help. But I'll tell you, so for my master's, I studied mercury levels in smallmouth bass in the Smokies in Little River, Little Pigeon, and Abrams Creek. And in that study, we collected 72 total smallmouth bass, and I analyzed mercury levels in all of those fillets. I also looked in the stomach of every single one of those fish. And with those fish especially, they're really generalists. There was no prevailing, there was always this or always that. There's always a number of different food items. So smallmouth bass, you don't have to worry as much about matching the hatch, so to speak.
Right.
Because they just eat everything. They're super opportunistic. And I've seen similar things with trout before, where I found, anything from the smallest little mayfly nymph that was this big to a dragonfly nymph that was this large and still alive in the stomach of a rainbow trout at the same time. So sometimes they're feeding really opportunistically. And I also caught it on a swimming grub because I was fishing for smallmouth.
That's awesome.
But I've also had times where I open the gut and there is only one size of one insect. That's it. It's just they're dialed in on scuds, maybe, of one, and maybe that's because it's the most prevalent at the time. But there's this myth, I think, that you have to match the hatch all the time. People get really caught up in the exact fly. And while it's good to be aware of what's in your system and try to mimic that as much as you can, none of that's going to top proper presentation.
Right.
And like spooking the fish, really. Especially in the Smokies, those fish are not as selective as other places, but they are maybe some of the most spooky fish of all time. So maybe get caught up less in fly selection. Make sure that your nymph is getting down and make sure that your dry fly is not dragging. If you can do those two things, those fish are going to be a lot less selective than, maybe they're made out to be. So that's kind of where that thought went for me. But there's also something from a scientific standpoint called the river continuum concept. Have you ever heard of this before?
No.
Okay. So the river continuum concept is basically just this framework that breaks down differences in the stream ecosystem from the headwaters downstream. So from those really high mountain streams where maybe we've got brook trout, especially think of a brook trout stream, really high elevation, headwaters, super cold. And I'll ask you the question, what's going on there as far as like what's surrounding that stream? What can you tell me about the places that you find those streams?
Tight quarters, smaller stream. Higher elevation, like you said, and I think that would be the thing, tightest and a lot of cover.
Yep, you nailed it. So that cover piece is especially important. When you have stream ecosystems, their energy inputs come from primarily two places. They come from leaf input is one way, and the other major energy input is the sun. The higher up you go in elevation, the more crowded those streams are, the more mature overstory you're going to have, the less sunlight is getting to the stream. So the more that stream is going to be relying on leaf litter falling from the trees to kind of form the energy basis of that stream. As a result, the insect community that you find around that energy input is going to be different. There are insects that are specialized for breaking down that leaf matter. And you can classify some of those aquatic insects into a couple different functional feeding groups, they're called. So one of them is you would call a shredder. Those are like your caddis flies that shred leaves and break them down and make them more available. And they feed on those leaves as they're shredding them too. That's kind of their energy input. And then something can eat those insects, and that's how energy moves through the food web. So you've got shredders, you've got collectors, which are also a lot of times caddisfly species. If you've ever seen those kind of webs on rocks, right? Those web spinning caddis. They're collecting things through the stream. They're filtering things out of the water. So those types of insects are going to be most prevalent up at those higher elevations. There's also going to be less diversity in fish species and insect species because the energy level is so limited up there. It's the inputs are only limited to the things that are falling into the stream at that level. As you move your way down, that stream becomes wider. More sunlight is able to reach into that stream. So now we have more energy in the form of plankton and periphyton and things like those algal communities that grow on rocks that are really slippery and kind of green, that kind of green film. So that's energy. Those are primary producers that are taking energy from the sun and then making it available to the stream. So the stream can support more life, more diversity of life, and you still have leaf input there. So you have those species that depend on the detritus or the dead leaves, but then you also have these insects called scrapers or grazers. So if you think of like a flathead mayfly, the Heptageniidae family, they're grazers or scrapers where they'll go over top of those rocks and they'll feed on those algal communities. And now you've got more life supported and more things can eat more different types of insects, and different fish species are going to be sometimes specialized to a certain type of insect or insects in different areas of the stream. So, and as you go down, you start kind of getting towards the warm water part of the continuum. And there's a really cool diagram of this too that you can just look up, river continuum concept, and it'll tell you about this. But familiarize yourself with the fact that there's that gradient, right? Of up top, we're going to have fewer types of insects because we've got a more limited food base. We're not going to be able to support as much life because there's just not as much energy. And then as you come downstream, you're able to support more and more life as more and more of that sunlight can reach the stream. And then, of course, all the nutrients that were originated upstream are also flowing downstream. So you're able to support more life, basically.
That's unbelievable. I never even thought that far into it. And see, that's one thing that I need to familiarize. Damn, I can't speak. Familiarize myself with more is the insects, and stuff like that. But dude, that answer was exactly what I was looking for, dude. You freaking nailed that.
All right,
Nailed
perfect.
it.
Awesome.
I like what you said about the sunglasses too. You really do need a good pair of, and a lot of people sleep on that. And I see a lot of people too, like, dude, like, why are you spending, say, $280 on a good pair of sunglasses? It's like, if you knew what, like, what we're using them for, you'd understand why. And it's like, it gives you more of an advantage. And that's why it's like, if I'm bringing somebody fishing, I'm carrying 2 pairs of sunglasses. I had a pair of Bahios and a pair of Smiths, and usually, like, I'll give somebody else the Smiths. And they're like, dude, this is a game changer. I was like, exactly. So don't give me shit for buying a $280 pair of sunglasses ever again.
It's incredible, man. It changes everything for sure. And when you don't have them, like when I was working at the lab and through different things I've done in the biological field, in the sciences, we would do a lot of electrofishing, either boat or backpack, where if you're not familiar with electrofishing, if you're doing it, you're basically using electrical current to stun and immobilize fish so that you can net them and let them recover in a tank, and you can weigh and measure them and then release them. It's usually not lethal for the most part if you have your settings right. There are times where fish do succumb to the current and they do die. That's pretty rare if you're doing it right. But we tend to believe that even if it is lethal, sometimes the data that you get and the information you get's worth the sacrifice of a few fish because it would probably save a lot more. So we do it either usually with a backpack or on a boat. With the backpack, it's like this big Ghostbusters looking backpack.
I was gonna say, dude, I've seen them do it with the backpack where you look like a Ghostbuster.
And it's got these 2 like super long probes. Yeah, it looks exactly like a Ghostbusters, man.
You got like
big old probes coming off the end.
So you got a Michael Jordan wingspan. It's unbelievable. These things are sweet though, dude.
It's super cool because it shows you there's just so many more fish and just period, but also more species than you ever might expect. And that's another, if you can, go snorkel the places that you fly fish.
I'm about to have to try and do that.
If you've never snorkeled where you fly fish, you're missing out for so many reasons. For one, it's just freaking cool. It's just so cool. I remember the first time I put on a snorkel mask and went underwater in a freshwater stream. I think it was on the Pigeon, actually. We were doing a survey to see if banded darter reintroductions were going well, because if you're familiar with the Pigeon River story at all, everything in there died because of the paper mill contaminating it. And I was working with one of the guys that did some of the fish species reintroductions and the restorations there. But I put on the snorkel mask and I put my head under the water, and there were 2 red horses. I don't remember if I think they were river red horse was this species. But red horse is just it's a sucker species, and I think they're beautiful. I think they're super cool looking fish. They don't look particularly uh, graceful out of the water. They're not as aesthetically pleasing, you might say, as a trout. They don't look as sleek. But under the water, I put my mask on. I looked under the water, and there are two of them, and they were just like gliding, just
Damn.
back and forth. And you could see that they were just totally in tune with the current. They knew the tiniest moves to make with their body to go from one side to the other. And it just felt like I was in another world. So, dude, yeah, put a snorkel mask on, go look around, pay attention to how much slower the water current is moving near the bottom than it is at the top.
Yeah.
Because even a big dude like me, I'm 6'3", I'm not small, but there could be water rushing over top of me. And if I pin myself to the bottom, especially like behind a big boulder, I would just stay put. So it's really interesting to see. That will inform some of your mending choices, especially. Yeah. And it can teach you just how little of a zone you're actually effectively hitting on a cast if you're not paying attention to where you're dry or your indicator or whatever it is.
I'm gonna have to eat an edible and do that.
I wouldn't recommend being impaired underwater.
Yeah, no, that's good.
That's not medical advice from the podcast, but
dude, well,
you do you, man.
Nah, I'm not gonna do that, dude. I'm looking for jobs.
I would be remiss if I said, we're talking about things that could make you a better angler. As a guide, I have to mention, check your hook points. Check if you miss a fish, check the point of your hook, check the bend of your hook, make sure you didn't bend the hook out. But take that hook and just put it point down just on your thumbnail and drag. And if it sticks in your thumbnail and it kind of sticks and you can jiggle it and it doesn't move, then it's still sharp. If it just comes right off of your thumbnail, that means that your point rolled. And sometimes you can't even see it, but you can feel it. And I've seen a lot of people, and this has happened to me before, where I'm like, dude, I keep missing fish. And I finally look at the hook point and it's rolled over. So just check that stuff,
I keep a file in my backpack or vest sometimes because it's like, I tie, and it's like I'll go on to Amazon.com and I'll get those big bear hooks, and it's like a thing from China where it's like 120 of them for $10. And some of those hooks suck, but it's like I'll sit there. It's like before I tie them, I'll sit there with a file. I'm like, all right, that looks a little bit better. But dude, that is a great tip too, because I've had some times where I'm like, why the fuck am I missing like 6 fish in a row? And I look at my hook point and I'm like, that's fucking wire right there. That thing's freaking dull as piss.
Yeah, it happens, man.
Oh yeah,
it happens. So you'll miss a lot of fish if you fish with a dull hook point.
Oh yeah,
I know from experience.
Same here, dude. I've done it plenty of times, and it's like I'll play a trick on one of my buddies though. It's like I'll realize that my hook point's like that. It's dull as piss. But hey, man, let me get a fly. I'll be like, all right, here you go. I'll take one of them, and they're like, what the hell? Why? They start crashing out because they're losing fish. I'm like, hey, chill. I was like, here's a better one, and I'll give it to him. I was like, the hook point was dull on that. You dumbass.
Dude, that is dirty. I'm gonna remember that if we go fishing. I'm not asking you for nothing, dude.
He's like, what? Why am I losing so many fish? I'm like, here it is a dull hook point, dumbass. But
man.
What's your best fly fishing story you got from either just like free like just doing it yourself or guiding?
So I'll tell 2 or 3 just kind of short ones. So my favorite fly fishing story, pretty much all of my favorite fishing stories, period, always involve another person. It's never, there's cool stuff that happens when you're alone, but I just love doing it with other people. And that a lot of my favorite stories are like that. So my favorite story is I learned to trout fish on a stream in Western North Carolina, and at the time I was fishing with worms because that's how I was that's how I was taught at the time. I got into fly fishing on my own later, but this stream that I still remember like clear as day, the first trout that I ever caught. So we parked at this bridge and we walked down to the stream. And up to this point, I'd only fished in lakes and ponds. I'd never caught a fish out of moving water before. So I didn't understand. I couldn't even conceptualize how a fish could live in water that was moving. It didn't make any sense to me because I grew up in the flatlands where we just didn't fish streams, we fished lakes. So get up there and I'm with my uncle, and there's kind of this big overhanging tree, and he tells me, he's like, okay, cast right up there. And I was like, but I can see the bottom and there's no fish. So why do you want me to cast up there? It's like, just trust me, man, just do it. So I'm like, okay, whatever. But I can clearly see there's no fish here. So I cast up, letting it drift down, and then my line just stops. He's like, I reel down and set the hook. Okay, whatever. So I reel down and set the hook, and this fish just materialized. It might as well have just apparated there or something. It just appears. And from that moment, I was hooked, pun intended there. It was like magic to me. And it still feels like that. It still feels like that. That feeling's never gone away. But that stream lives in my mind as a very special place. And that's also where I caught my first fish on a fly that I had tied. And it's the setting of another story that I'll tell. So my cousin and we'd like to go up there and do some fishing. And I had started getting more serious about fly fishing around the time where I was starting college because my roommate had been a fly fishing guide before. So he was on a pro deal and helped me buy a rod that I'd never be able to afford otherwise.
Who was your roommate?
I'm not going to tell because I don't think that's allowed.
I got you.
I don't think that's allowed. But yeah, he helped me buy this sweet rod, and my cousin got one as well, just on his own. And we were up fishing that stream where I caught my first trout. Uh-huh. And at the time when I had learned how to fish, we were fishing for just stocked fish, and it was a blast. But what I didn't realize was there's a section of this stream that had a really nice wild brown trout population. I found that out later. It was around the time I started fly fishing. So we were fly fishing for those wild browns, and we'd had a pretty good day. We would always hit the trail and walk downstream and then fish our way back up to the vehicle. So we'd fished all day. We were catching them on a dry dropper. It was just, classic summertime, good fun. And we get up to one of my favorite holes, and just like nothing's happening, and it doesn't make sense because the fish have been biting all day, and I can't figure out why we're not catching any fish in this hole because it's pretty much always productive. So the way that the hole sets up is there were two slots basically. So the water's coming out of a pool, and then it sort of hits this rock formation, and it's coming over the top of it, and you've got one slot and you've got another slot, and then you have real slack water right between it that's kind of just circulating. I'm sure you fished plenty of places that before. So I'm as far downstream as I can be trying to get a cast up there, and I sucked pretty bad at casting at the time. So I couldn't get my fly exactly where I wanted to without my line just getting dragged right down out of the sweet spot. I wanted to kind of hit it right in the middle of those two slots and just kind of let it sit there.
Yeah.
But I couldn't because my line just kept getting drugged. So I'd cast and it'd go too far and it'd drag, and then I'd cast and it was too close and it'd drag. And after 15 minutes, I finally landed it with my line. Just I don't know how I managed to finally get it there, but my fly, I was fishing a dry dropper, I think it was a stimulator and some nymph that some nameless attractor nymph that my roommate tied that I really liked. It's just some little green thing. And finally get that cast just right. And that stimulator starts kind of drifting downstream real slowly, and then it kind of just stops. I'm like, well, that fly should still be drifting. So I set the hook, and I'm like, oh man, how did I hook a log? Like this thing's not moving. And then out of the middle of those two slots in that water, I just see this bar of gold
Oh,
come up. And
that's a
I'm
great
like,
feeling.
oh my God, that's the biggest brown trout I've ever seen. And I'm like, man, he's really like, he's not pulling real hard. I'm not sure. And no sooner did I have that thought than that fish, I swear, just flicked his tail one time. And my rod went, pop, popped right off.
Oh, I hate that.
I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken, especially because that was my last one of those flies, and I had been slaying them on it all day. I was devastated. So, that fish continued to grow over time in our minds because we both saw it, and it was huge. So, fast forward a couple of weeks, and I'm like, dude, we gotta go try and catch that fish again. So we go and we do the same thing where we go downstream, and then we fish our way up to the spot. And I'm like, all right, Cody, who's my cousin, I was like, Cody, I'll let you take the first swing at him this time since I took the swing at him last time. So Cody takes his chubby Chernobyl, casts up there. First cast, brown trout comes speeding out of the bottom of that hole. Yeah, there you go.
I'm tied up 1,000 of them.
Yeah, they're a great fly.
Dude, they're awesome.
They're fantastic, and that brown trout thought so too. And dude, it was like a comedy because that fish comes up and slams it. He sets the hook, pop.
Oh,
fish breaks him off too, and he just looks at me, and I look at him, and I couldn't even be mad because I just did the same thing, right? So, fast forward a couple more weeks, and all I've done is think about this fish, right? And my cousin has a chance to go up and fish without me. And I was like, shit, dude, he's going to catch this fish. And like, I want him to, but I'm also like, it's kind of like my turn. So he goes up there, and I think he was wearing a GoPro at the time. So there might even be video footage of this. There might be video footage somewhere. I think he was wearing a camera, but he goes up, and he was going to a wedding with his girlfriend at the time that just happened to be in the area. And it was like a rainy, overcast day. And he just went straight to the hole. And I was like, man, crap, dude. He's going to catch the fish. So he's approaching the hole. He's fishing it from the bottom. He's working his way up, and he casts it up in that spot. And dude, like clockwork, again, the fish comes up, slams it. He goes to set the hook, popped it on the hook set. So now this fish has broken us off 3 times. And it's just, at this point, this fish might as well have been 40 inches, right? The way it lives in our brains. So a couple more weeks go by, and I was on a hunting trip up there with one of my buddies. Or it was like an hour and a half away, actually, where I was at. And I was like, dude, I gotta go. I have to go try before it's going to get like way too cold. And I'm not going to be able to fish for a couple months after this, so I got to go. So I go out there and tie on the stimulator, and I just go straight to the hole. And I'm like, all right. And I'm watching. I can't see anything. But I know now where this fish lives, right? Like it's been months that this fish is in the same area.
This fish's social security number at this point.
Yeah, and he's got 4 flies hanging out of his face at this point. So I get up there, and I'm casting, and I'm kind of struggling to get it right in the right spot, but finally I get the perfect drift, and sure enough, that fish comes up and smashes it again, and I set the hook, and so I'm like, all right, you're not getting away this time. So I was ready for the fish to run that time. And I ended up fighting it for what felt like an eternity, and my heart was just pumping the entire time. And finally, this thing's coming up to the net, and I'm holding the rod up here to finally slide into the net. And I was like, yes! I was so freaking pumped, man. I couldn't believe it. It's just this beautiful, beautiful wild brown trout.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And it didn't have the flies in its mouth anymore. I think we were fishing barbless. But that would have been cool to get those back.
Yeah. So hey, thanks. This is like my savings for like.
Yeah.
I would have mounted it with like five flies hanging out of its mouth.
I thought about it, man. I really did, but I wanted to let it go to live another day, especially after that. So, but yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. Just the fish that my cousin's like a brother to me. He's my best friend.
Yeah.
So, and
Dude.
and he's my older cousin. So he's always kind of
That's
had a
awesome.
one up on me. So for me to get this one,
That
it was
meant
a
a
good
lot.
feeling.
Dude, if
Yeah.
I was your cousin after losing at that time at the wedding, I wouldn't be going to that wedding. I'd be like, hey, I got some business to handle. you,
Yeah.
you got business to handle. I'm sorry.
I know it, man. So yeah, that was a good time.
Dude, yeah, that's a great story.
It's pretty good.
Oh yeah.
I'll tell one guiding story too if we still got time.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so normally we go out and we do 2-hour trips at the place that I work. That's what most people book. And the first hour or so, 45 minutes, is a casting instructional, and then I walk them through how to fight a fish, and I pretend to be the fish so that they can get practice, stripping and then letting line out because, and it normally goes out the window immediately as soon as they hook a fish. Like there's one lady where I taught her the whole thing, and she fished the entire time and hooked right at the end, hooked a fish. And I was like, strip, strip, strip. And she's not stripping. And I'm sitting there with the net. Like, if you just strip 2 more times, this fish is in the net. And I look back and she's holding the rod halfway up and then above the reel. And she's doing this and she's backed against a tree, like fighting for her life. And I was like, and then the line goes slack and the fish comes off.
Oh my God. Oh, dude, I love it when dude, that's how it was when I hooked one of those fish in the dam in Aruba, dude. It's like I set the hook and I just lose all bodily function. It's like, dude, shit, I finally hooked one. It's like I forget what the fuck to do. It's like I'm 7 beers deep, sitting there. It's like I completely lose everything, dude. I might as well have been shitting my pants in the middle of the damn ocean, dude. That I hate
it happens to me. It happened to me the other day, fishing out of a drift boat for the first time, where I was making longer casts than I was used to. Because man, 95% of my casts are high sticking.
Yeah,
like I don't cast far at all. I use a 10-foot rod so that I can keep line off the water, and I don't make long casts. Casting out of a drift boat was a different experience, especially with split shot and all that stuff. But I had a ton of line out, and I hooked a nice fish. And I'm like, okay, he's pulling line. This is fine. Then I realized the line is wrapped around me. It's wrapped around my coffee mug that's sitting there in the front of the stripping basket. And it's wrapped around the entire front of the boat. So I'm sitting there and I'm fishing with 2 other guides, right? So they're giving me hell because that's what we do. When guides go fishing with each other, we say everything to each other that we wish we could say to clients.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Like, pay attention. So I'm sitting there and like, oh my God, I look like such a freaking idiot. So I'm trying to pull the line off the front of the boat, and then I'm trying to reel up here, and the fish is going all crazy, and the boat's drifting. So it happens, man. But
that's such an experience fishing out of a drift boat, though, dude.
It's so much fun.
I'm on the Facebook Marketplace all the time because I'm like a Facebook Marketplace veteran, dude. I'll sit there and try and get the best deal. I've been looking at rafts, like the drift rafts. I want to go and float. I want to go and float the muskie at the French Broad. Yeah,
that would be sick, man.
Yeah, dude,
and there's some great smallmouth in the French Broad too. Yeah. It's a fantastic. Yeah, if you get one, let me know. I would love to go with you, man.
Sure. I'll let you know when I get one, dude. I'd love to just break down and buy a damn drift boat, but it's like, I don't know, dude. I'm between a drift boat or I'm between like a drift raft and a damn flats boat.
What are you gonna buy a flats boat for? Dude, how often are you gonna go flats fishing, man?
Dude,
you gonna go carp fishing?
Yeah, dude. I don't know, striper on what's it called?
Dude, get a drift boat and then just fish. Yeah, just fish tailwaters and stuff.
Like
man.
that.
Come on.
Oh, yeah, dude. I've been just looking on the Facebook Marketplace. I'm like, you know what? I'm just typing in the most random shit. I'm always on the Facebook Marketplace looking for.
I'm a junkie.
Real something like that. Dude, well,
I'm addicted. Let me finish this. Let me finish this story real quick.
Okay.
There's there was a trip that we had with a husband and wife, and the wife was pregnant. And I was like, okay, we've got to get this lady a fish. But she was like, no, I just want my husband to catch one. I'm just out here to have a good time. So I'm like, okay, so we'll try and get him a fish first. So we've done our casting lesson, we've done our instructional and all that, and we go down to the stream. We've got about an hour left, and we fished for 30 minutes, and the guy's had a couple of strikes that he's missed, and she's kind of just fishing off by herself downstream, kind of heckling him a little bit, good naturedly.
Yeah.
And finally he hooks a fish, and this fish, I have never in my life seen a fish fight as hard as this fish fought this dude. He must have fought it for 20 minutes. I was cold, and when we started, but by the end I was sweaty because every time I'd go around him to the other side to try and net the fish would go back downstream. I come back downstream, fish would go upstream, and it's, the wife's like, she stopped fishing at this point. She's just watching. And there's people gathering on the bridge who are watching, including my boss. So I was like, oh my God, we got to land this fish. I think part of it was the guy I think I overemphasized at that point just how light the line was. We're using 5X.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's not that light.
Right.
But I try to emphasize it so that people don't try to horse the fish in, because that's people's tendency. But I think he just wasn't applying enough tension, and the fish just kept darting back and forth. So finally, like 20 minutes later, I get this fish into the net, and he's stoked. His wife is stoked. Everybody on the bridge is cheering, and we take the pictures with it and let it go. And at this point, we got 5 minutes left in the trip. And I was like, man, I really wanted to get this pregnant lady a fish. That would have been super cool. So I switch her and her husband out. And I was like, all right, just cast right up there and just let it drift down through here. And dude, on her first cast, she casts upstream, and I see that indicator stop. And I said, set. She sets the hook, and just from her setting the hook, she kind of like lifted the rod up and back like this, and the fish came right into my net in seconds. And I was like, that's how you fight a fish to the guy.
That's awesome.
Now, what I didn't tell them is I got down into the net and I started looking. It's like, hold on. That fish has a sore in its mouth that's awfully similar to the fish that guy just caught.
Yeah.
That her husband caught, right?
Yeah.
So it cut out there for a second, but I get down there, I'm looking at the net, and I'm looking at the fish, and I'm like, dude, this is the same fish.
The wife just fought it like a man. She fought it way better.
It was the same exact fish, and it was just exhausted. That's why it didn't fight. And I actually saw it in the stream. It was just sitting there with its mouth open, and she drifted her egg right into its mouth.
I would adapt.
And I knew it was the same fish because it was the same size, and it had a sore in the same exact place in its mouth. But I didn't tell them that, of course. I was like, yeah man.
Great fish.
She was even like, I think mine's bigger than yours. And I said, yeah, it is.
That's like 10 times bigger. Dude, that's awesome. I just shake that fish's hand and be like, hey, thanks. You're real G for that. I didn't want
that fish got some extra food pellets at the end of the day.
Exactly. So. Dude, that's awesome. Yeah. Dude, but that's about all I got, man. You got anything else you want to say?
No, dude, I covered all the bases I wanted to, so.
That was a great episode, man. Like I said, dude, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm actually trying to get up to the Smokies here pretty soon and do like a camping and fishing trip. So when I go up there, I'll hit you up. We'll go and drink coffee and shoot the shit with the old guys at the Little River outfit.
Yeah. Let me know, dude. I'm here all the time, so I would always be down. Let me know when you're going up to the Pigeon, too.
Oh, I will, man.
Sneak over that way.
For sure. I was going to go tomorrow, but I think my girlfriend's got some other plans, but and then Sunday I'm going to watch some football. But
true.
I know I'll be in Spindale next weekend for the Angler's Choice Marine Open House. My buddy's sister works there, and she asked me if I could set up a table. And then I might go over to the Pigeon River that Sunday because it's only a Friday, Saturday show. So I'll let you know if I go up there, and then I'll hit you up when I go up to the Smokies too, or like Cherokee or something like that.
Yeah,
'Cause
holler at me, man.
I will. I might
It's
go
gonna get
do
good here soon. It's
dude.
cold, but we are right around the corner from
It's gonna be
awesome
perfect.
fishing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, go do like a gambling and fishing trip or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Perfect.
dude, like I said, dude, I appreciate you coming on, man. That was a great episode. Um, like I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I enjoyed it.
No problem, man. You have a great rest of your day. Thank God
All right, buddy. You too.
thank God the week's over.
Yeah, I know it. I know it.
But
Enjoy the weekend.
you too, man.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah.